about second breakfast.
Time for second breakfast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Second Breakfast, hosted by Monster here from the Breakdowns for Breakfast podcast. Today, I wanted to do another band history because this one is really, really wild. And that's the history of the band Coal Chamber. Now, if you've listened to our show a few times, you know I'm a big NuMetal guy, and Coal Chamber is sort of one of the, I don't want to say forefathers of NuMetal, but, you know, their first album came out in the 90s, and they were sort of at the beginning of the big NuMetal boom, and their history is very interesting, more so as time goes on. But we on the show, we covered Chamber Music, their second album, and we kind of glossed over a few things about their history, and it's actually pretty wild. They were very combative and explosive, and there was some mental health things and some physical health things. So I just thought this would make for an interesting band history, I guess you could say. And if some of this is wrong, it very well could be. I'm not an expert. This is stuff I gleaned from a few interviews and a couple of YouTube videos and some Wikipedia pages and stuff. So, you know, take all this with a grain of salt. I think I got most of the big points about right. And obviously, I'm not going to go into huge detail. You could make a really good hour-and-a-half documentary or something. This is going to be a 15 to 20 minute, you know, spiel like usual. So anyway, for anybody that doesn't know, the band started as Dez and Meigs. Well, hold on. Let me back up. Let me do this first. The band Coal Chamber, specifically in the beginning, was Dez Fafara on vocals, Meigs Rascon on guitar, Mikey Cox on drums, and Raina Foss on bass. We're going to get a lot more into the bass situation as we go on, but Raina was the first. So the band started as Dez and Meigs, and the name of the band was called She Is Pain. Meigs put out an ad for a singer, and Dez was one of the first people that tried out, and they really connected. They originally kind of connected over their love of the band Sisters of Mercy, but they were also huge fans of White Zombie. So being huge fans of White Zombie, they wanted to get a female bass player. So Dez and Meigs eventually changed the name of the band to Coal, and they recruited Raina Foss and Mike Cox on drums from another band. Meigs wanted to change the name of the band to Chamber, so they combined the two words, called it Coal Chamber. Dino Cazares from Fear Factory, which we'll probably do an episode on Fear Factory at some point, because they were one of those like NuMetal adjacent bands. They were sort of more just heavy metal and then also kind of industrial. So, but of course I was a big fan of a few of their albums. So anyway, but Dino, their Fear Factory's guitar player, got a Coal Chamber demo tape and passed it around, which eventually led Coal Chamber to get signed with Roadrunner Records. Now back in this time, Roadrunner was like a mix of butt rock and NuMetal. Like they had Nickelback, but they also had, you know, the first Coal Chamber albums and Fear Factory, Machine Head, and all that stuff too. So there was a little bit of a hiccup because Dez and his wife were going through some things, but they Coal Chamber officially signed with Roadrunner in 95. So in 1996, they were actually part of the first ever Ozfest tour, and that's when they ended up releasing their debut album in 1997. This album is really, really good. Most people probably, they might not know much off of it, but they probably know the song Loco, and they might know the song Big Truck as well. But there's a lot of bangers on that album. It's a lot heavier than Chamber Music, the album we did. But Chamber Music to me was a little more interesting, which is why I wanted to talk about that. But we'll get there. So Chamber Music, a couple years later, comes out in 1999. Like I said, if you want to know more, we did a whole episode on it. What's really funny is around this time, Sharon Osbourne becomes their manager. I think she might have been a little earlier, more like when they played Ozfest, so like maybe 97 or so. But around this time in '99, they go on tour with ICP of all people. Now, what's funny about this is the Insane Clown Posse actually had a pretty cool lineup for this tour that had a bunch of different bands, but for whatever reason, Coal Chamber was not clicking, and after 3 shows, they were booted. Also on that tour were Biohazard and Mindless Self-Indulgence, which, you know, I don't like to use the term guilty pleasure very often because, you know, I'm pretty open about my musical tastes, but Mindless Self-Indulgence might be a guilty pleasure. I love that band, and they're very problematic, so we'll come back to them one day, maybe. So in 2002, Coal Chamber released the album Dark Days. Now, around this time, Raina Foss, the bass player, quit to raise her daughter. She had actually had a baby with the drummer from Seven Dust, Morgan Rose. Around this time, and I am sorry, I'm going to get this name wrong, I'm sure, they got a new female bass player named Naja Pulin, maybe Pulin? I'm not exactly sure, and she took her place. That same year, 2002, the band broke up because Dez and Meigs got into a fist fight on stage. So apparently Dez and Meigs have always been very combative. They've had this weird relationship, which, you know, I've played in a lot of bands with a lot of people, and I haven't gotten along with all of them, but sometimes there's this chemistry that's both positive and negative at the same time. Like, this person is your brother, you ride or die with him, you love him, but at the same time, they know exactly how to piss you off, they know exactly what's going to set you off, so it goes both ways. You end up having a great relationship and a terrible one all at the same time. So anyway, it culminated into an actual fight on stage. And I believe Dez basically said this is going to be the last Coal Chamber show ever and stormed off the stage. They kind of continued to play a couple songs. Meigs was doing the vocals, and they just stopped the show after a little bit. But what's really fun is shortly after this, they actually did a one more performance because they were still trying to promote the album. It just came out. So they did a performance on the Carson Daly Show, which not TRL, he had his own show, and they had musical guests. And it's a really good performance. But knowing that they had sort of like already officially broke up and they still had this obligation, watching them perform, knowing that, it's very interesting. Good performance, though. So later on that year, they released a compilation called Giving the Devil His Due. And I've skimmed through this. I haven't listened to it a lot, but it's essentially B-sides and rarities and a couple of remixes and stuff like that. Oh, and I will say, I kind of glossed over the album Dark Days. I didn't love it. I wanted to love it because I did like the first 2 albums so much, but I feel like a lot of bands do this. You know, their first album was very heavy, so with chamber music they got a little more experimental, and I don't think it resonated with fans as well as they wanted. So when they went to Dark Days, it was much heavier, but they still tried to incorporate a little bit of that gothic thing to it. And it felt a little bit clunky to me. I prefer the first 2 albums. So after the Giving the Devil His Due, Dez went on to become the vocalist of Devil Driver. I've never been able to get into Devil Driver. They're a little more straight ahead metal. And Dez's voice, I like Dez's voice, but I like it better in the context of Coal Chamber than in Devil Driver. It just, it fits more with that new metal-y kind of bounce and groove. Not to say Devil Driver doesn't have some of that. Because I say they're more straight ahead metal, but they would probably fall into that groove metal kind of category, you know. They're not that dissimilar to a Pantera or something like that. But if you like really heavy metal, I mean, Devil Driver's really talented. There's a lot of good dudes in that band, like, you know, musicianship-wise. But my taste, I'll take Coal Chamber over Devil Driver any day. So some of the other people in Coal Chamber, they threw around a couple of side projects and stuff, but nothing really took off. But Dez, like I said, he had his career going. So in 2008, Dez and Meigs finally kind of squashed their beef, and they actually, Meigs joined Devil Driver on stage to perform Loco in California at a show, that's kind of fun. So in September of 2011, the guys got back together, and this time they added Chelsea Ray Harper, I think, to play bass. And during this time in 2012 and 2013, Coal Chamber did some more touring. They played some bigger festivals. And then Naja Pulin, I'm sorry, I'll just say Naja because I think that's right. She came back in 2013. Around this time, the band signed to Napalm Records, and in 2014 released their 4th studio album. As of today, in 2025, this is their last album. It was called Rivals. Now, this is one of those albums, and it was released in May of 2015. This is one of those albums that I go back to pretty often to try to see if I get it. Like, sort of like Dark Days, I wanted to like it more than I did, especially after, Dark Days came out in 2002, and here it is over 10 years later before we get Rivals. So it was a lot of anticipation, and it just didn't wow me like I wanted it to. But I still go back and revisit it. It's got some bangers, some great guitar tone. It's a fun album. But then in May of 2016, Dez came out and said the band was back on hiatus with a quote that basically said, because he was so busy with Devil Driver, Coal Chamber has no place in my life whatsoever at this point. So that was kind of like, oh, okay. But then shortly thereafter, he started performing Coal Chamber songs with Devil Driver. So that's not great. So around this time, actually a couple years later in 2018, Meigs started playing guitar with the band Gemini Syndrome. Gemini Syndrome is another very cool band that we'll probably talk about at some point. They're one of those bands, trying to think of some other examples, maybe like Saliva or Puddle of Mud or something that kind of straddle the line between butt rock and NuMetal. Like, they've got those big hard rock verses and choruses, but every once in a while the drums will get a little bouncy and groovy. But yeah, Gemini Syndrome is really cool, and a lot of cool lyrics too on some of those songs. So when I saw that Meigs was in Gemini Syndrome, I got real excited because Gemini Syndrome had been around for a little while before Meigs joined, and then they brought him in, and the sound didn't shift significantly, but it was, you could tell there was another person in the room giving out ideas. So now, in 2020, Dez said he wouldn't rule out a Coal Chamber reunion. Everybody was on speaking terms. He did say, another fun quote, "Some stuff went horribly wrong when we got back together to release Rivals." And he mostly wanted to concentrate on Devil Driver. So Dez, from everything I've seen, seems like a real smart guy. He seems like a very talented guy. But with a lot of really talented artists, I think he also had some, I don't want to say mental health issues. It's not that. It's just that he was being pulled in different directions. I think as musicians, we all get a little bit nostalgic for previous bands and previous feelings and emotions and tours and stuff. So I think he was kind of battling. I've got Devil Driver. We've got a good amount of success. I think altogether Devil Driver has like 9 albums, which is wild. It's crazy to me that Coal Chamber only released 4 in their discography, and Devil Driver has like 9. But anyway, but Dez definitely seems to kind of waffle back and forth between, does he want to do Coal Chamber, does not want to do it. So anyway, in November of 2022, they got back together and performed at the Sick New World Festival in 2023. So, sorry, that was confusing. They got back together in November of 2022 and started rehearsing and everything so they could perform at the Sick New World Festival in 2023. So, sorry. And a lot of people got real excited about that. And the performance is on YouTube. You can check it out. It's funny because if anybody doesn't know Coal Chamber, the way they look, they've always been like kind of gothy, a lot of black. Obviously, as they've gotten older, they've taken out some of the piercings and, you know, they don't have as much green hair and stuff as they used to. But I think they played at like 2 or 4 in the afternoon, so it's bright and sunny, and they come out there doing Loco and Sway and stuff. It's awesome. But it sounds really good. You can tell they're all like feeling it, you know. And then, so after that, they actually went on tour that summer. It was called the Psychotherapy Sessions. And the headliner was Mudvayne, and the openers were Gwar, Nonpoint, Coal Chamber, and Butcher Babies. I almost went to this, and in hindsight now, I wish I would have. But I had just seen Mudvayne with Rob Zombie, and I'm not the biggest fan of any of the other bands, so I was just like, I really just want to go for Coal Chamber. And I didn't think that was going to be a problem because shortly after, Coal Chamber announced their own headlining tour called Fiend for the Fans that was supposed to start in the summer of 2024. Around a couple years before this, Dez got COVID, and apparently it was very severe. And even to this day, in 2025, he is still struggling with it. A matter of fact, this tour that was supposed to happen in 2024 got canceled and rescheduled for the spring of this year, 2025. But before it came up, they canceled the whole thing completely, again, due to Dez's health. Now, I mentioned Raina Foss earlier, and I kind of glossed over this. I mentioned that the other bass players came in and took her place. She, well, here, we'll just get into it. So on September 7th of 2021, Raina Foss was reported missing by Metal Injection magazine. It was reported that the manager of the group home she was living in said she was missing. Now, around the time, I don't know the timeline exactly, but I know that she quit the band to raise her daughter. And over time, her mental health continued to deteriorate. And I'll get into some things here in a second. But basically, she was very bad mental health. And so she was living in a group home. There's speculation that she was in and out of some mental hospitals. And I don't know the full extent. And I don't know that it's really public record because it is a family thing, you know. But so she got reported missing. So her daughter, Kayla Rose, came out and said that was untrue. And the quote she said was, "I spoke to my mother as recently as yesterday, and we have never lost contact. My grandparents have also been in contact with my mother, and we all know exactly where she is. I have a message into the New Orleans Police Department advising them to this, and I'm waiting for them to respond." She went on to deny a feud between her father, the Morgan Rose, the drummer from Sevendust, and Dez from Coal Chamber. She went on to say, "My dad and Dez are friends and have been for a long time." She says, "I'm confused where all of this started from, but it can stop now. Hopefully there won't be a next time, but maybe someone can check before running these stories that end up disrupting my entire family in the future." So I don't really know exactly where Metal Injection got that information from or why they ran with that story, but I did see an interview with Dez from 2023 that he did with Revolver magazine. He had a lot to say about Raina, and he basically said that within the context of the band, he said nobody talks to Raina. Raina is mentally ill. He claims she doesn't recognize anyone. He said that in the middle of the touring cycle for the album Chamber Music, she started locking herself in hotel rooms, saying that she was seeing ghosts. Now this is where it gets really wacky. At one point, they were in Boston recording, and according to Des, Raina said she couldn't get out of her bed because there were people dressed in Victorian clothing holding her down. Des said during this particular situation, he too could hear people talking to her. And apparently this was a property in Boston, Massachusetts that was built in the 1700s. And so Des said maybe Raina was onto something, maybe she really did hear these things. He basically went on to say that maybe she was prophetic, but what she was seeing and hearing ended up ultimately ruining her life. Now, if you look up Raina Foss online, you're not going to find much. She's pretty much off the grid now. I don't know her mental state as of today. This whole she went missing, know where she is thing happened in 2021. So who's to say exactly? But clearly she had some severe mental health problems, and the explosive nature of Des and Meigs and all of that back in the day, I guess it kind of took its toll on her. Good on Mikey Cox for staying out of the way, man. He played drums and just moved on. But yeah, so that's pretty much it as of right now. March 2025. There have not been a whole lot of talk about any more Coal Chamber, new Coal Chamber, or that tour. Des is still battling with his physical health due to COVID, and I don't know who would be playing bass. Probably Naja, because she's sort of always been there. And thoughts and prayers to Raina and her family. I hope that she's getting better. But yeah, as of right now, as a Coal Chamber fan, I'm hopeful for new music. I would love to see them live. Obviously, seeing them live now instead of 2002 is a big difference. So I'm not. If they tour and they come to Greensboro, I would go. But I'm not going to go to 4 or 5 hours away. It just is what it is. But I would love to hear new music. I think the way Meigs plays guitar and the way Des sings just links up so well. And no other combination works is in my ears. Like Devil Driver and Gemini Syndrome, they're very cool. I like those bands. But when Des and Meigs are together, it's explosive, both in a good way and a bad way. So anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on Coal Chamber. Did you know some of this? Did you, is this all news to you? The Raina Foss thing was what was really like, wow. I had no idea. But, yeah, so that's sort of the Loco history of Coal Chamber. Tell me what you think. Send us some emails, breakdownsbreakfast@gmail.com. Obviously, we got the Facebook page. Be sure to leave us comments on all of our social medias. You can leave us comments on Spotify now. You can even send us a text through Spotify, which is kind of wacky. But if you do, please put your name and contact information, because we've gotten a few messages, but we don't know who they're from or how to get back in touch with them. So anyway, thank you for listening or watching, depending on whatever, to this episode of Second Breakfast. And I hope you have a great
What about second breakfast?
Time for second breakfast.